In the opening scenes of the movie, George and his family move into a rundown house with no electricity and scarce food. While their mother advises gratitude, George remains skeptical. That night, as George sleeps, his friend Alan imparts a piece of advice: to avoid confrontation on his first day of school, considering George's nervous disposition. At school, George's appearance draws attention, and he struggles to answer the teacher's questions. During lunch, he sits alone, foodless, while others eat. A fellow student shows support, but George's frustration boils over, leading to a fight. When the teacher intervenes, George flees the scene. Years later, we find George and his friend observing a bar where a drunken man exits. They decide to rob him, unaware that he's an undercover policeman setting a trap. As they attempt the robbery, a police car arrives, and a chase ensues. George hides in sewer pipes, and the police can't locate him due to his clever tactic of covering himself in sewage. On his way home, George stumbles upon a place offering free food and drink, while also discovering and nurturing one's talents in exchange for service. He excitedly shares this with his mother and expresses his desire to join this institution. His mother supports his decision, allowing him to embark on this new journey. The following day, George arrives at the institution and is issued its official uniform. The guard familiarizes him with the rules. Inside, he discovers the new shoes his mother purchased for him, one of which mysteriously starts playing music in March. This infuriates George, prompting him to shut off the music. At lunchtime, George is taken aback to find his shoes missing. He spots the thief wearing them in the dining hall and gives chase, his anger fueling his pursuit. The thief retreats into a room, locking the door behind him. Undeterred, George forcefully opens the door and confronts the thief. Things escalate, with George nearly tossing the thief out the window. However, a mediator named Doc intervenes, breaking up the fight. He was taken aback when he saw the broken door. George, with his file in hand, joined him in the car. Doc knew about George's history of 3 previous fights, which had led to his rejection. Doc gave him the money for the ticket, but George pleaded earnestly, explaining that the institution was all he had left, and they couldn't go back home defeated. Doc sympathized with George, deciding to return him to the institution. He noticed George's strength and asked him to join the club, revealing that he was the coach. George agreed, entered the gym, and faced one opponent. Despite initial failure and mockery from others, Doc continued to guide him. George, fueled by anger, eventually struck a punching bag with such force that it surprised everyone. Doc starts coaching George at the gym, guiding him with enthusiasm. George excitedly calls his mother to share his new boxing pursuit, but she's concerned about his safety. He reassures her that boxing is a regulated sport. In a rematch with a previous acquaintance, George impressively defeats his opponent, leaving Doc amazed at his progress. Eager to enter competitions, George approaches Doc, who advises him to continue training, considering him a novice. George inquires about the next tournament, and Doc mentions it's a year away, cautioning George that he's not ready for it yet. A year later, we witness George competing in the tournament, facing a formidable Russian boxer. His family watches the match on TV, brimming with pride. The fight commences, and the crowd passionately supports George. With a series of powerful punches, George secures victory, earning a gold medal and proudly hoisting the American flag. His family couldn't believe their eyes as their brother, at 19, won his first gold medal. The next day, still wearing his medal, he met with friends who questioned why he'd raised the American flag, given their concerns about racial issues. Angered, he sought solace with his mother, who calmed him down. He then shared his plan to enter an airport tournament, but he was distracted by a beautiful girl named Paula. They exchanged numbers, and later he introduced her to Doc, who in turn connected him with professional trainers Sadler and Coach Moore. George observed Sonny, who had a black belt, and trained with them. He began his training regimen and also started a relationship with Paula. George won several qualifying matches, gaining fame and deciding to marry Paula. He reached the tournament final, facing a pro who had beaten Muhammad Ali 2 years prior. Expectations favored the opponent, with the crowd cheering for him. In the fight, George recalled his coach's advice. Despite receiving an unexpected blow, George countered with a powerful punch, flooring his opponent. Spectators were astounded by his strength. The second round started, and George took control, delivering numerous blows before striking his opponent down, sealing his well-deserved championship victory. Duke was thrilled, foreseeing a future hero in George. As George's fame soared, he joined forces with Arch, recognizing his mathematical prowess. While watching the news, George learned that Muhammad Ali was taunting him, promising to face and defeat George someday. George treated his family to a grand celebration in a new home, even welcoming a child. However, he became increasingly distant from his wife due to fan-related issues, upsetting her. His sister, Mary, shared news of her pregnancy, which only escalated tensions. These family problems prompted George to travel for a significant tournament, with his sights set on a showdown with Muhammad Ali. Amidst anticipation, Muhammad Ali openly taunted George, who stayed silent. Expected to win due to his strength, George opted for a solo fight, ignoring his coach's advice. Initially in control, he lost focus due to his ego. Muhammad Ali seized the opportunity, leading to George's downfall. Despite initial hopes, Muhammad Ali emerged victorious, leaving everyone stunned by the unexpected outcome. After a talk with his family, George's wife expressed her desire for a divorce. He sought solace with his mother, who felt responsible for his failures. In an attempt to prove his strength, George challenged 5 boxers, including Muhammad Ali, who ridiculed him. Despite the mockery, George consulted with Doc and discovered the extent of his losses. Amidst this turmoil, he received word that his sister, Mary, was in the hospital about to give birth, but her baby faced danger. The family prayed for a miracle, and George, in his desperation, made a heartfelt plea to God. He offered to take the child's place if someone had to die. Shortly afterward, we witnessed Mary and her healthy son, a miracle that baffled the doctors. She believed George's prayers to God had brought about this incredible result. Days later, George faced an opponent, but struggled to maintain focus. His post-defeat reputation since Muhammad Ali's match took a toll on his spirit. Doc grappled with how to help him, and in his frustration, George collapsed, nearly dying. When he awoke, Doc informed him of their initial fear that he might not survive. Filled with newfound faith, George visited a church to share his experience and emphasize the power of belief in God's existence. Inspired by this transformative encounter, he made a life-altering decision: to retire from boxing and commit himself to serving God in the church, ultimately aspiring to become a priest. Upon leaving the church, George stunned Doc by announcing his retirement, remaining firm in his decision. He reached out to Muhammad Ali, fostering a new friendship. George also apologized to his wife, though she chose not to reconcile. In another chance encounter at a church, he met Jenny, kindling a love story. George took the microphone and shared advice with the congregation. Inspired by his newfound purpose, he embarked on a mission to restore an old, closed church. A decade later, George became the pastor, offering guidance to the community. When a mother requested boxing lessons for her child, he declined. In a heartwarming twist, George was shown with his wife Jenny and their children in the news, including the child accused of theft, a poignant reminder of the transformative journey he had embarked on. He deeply regretted declining to train the kid, which prompted him to spend hours in an old gym's effort to reopen it. During the renovation, he sensed Irish's nervousness, and something felt amiss. They poured substantial money into the project, and it soon attracted young athletes. However, a sudden power outage exposed an unpaid electricity bill, and to his shock, George found his bank account empty. This dire situation resulted from the Irish's betrayal, who had squandered the money on gambling. Fuming, George confronted Irish and threw a punch, but opted not to further escalate the situation. In a bid to rescue the sports club, George turned to advertising, although his wife cautioned that they hadn't raised half the needed funds. Left with no alternative, he pondered returning to boxing, even against Jenny's objections. He felt compelled to take action to save the situation. George approached Doc with a burning desire to return to boxing, fully aware of the challenges posed by his age and weight. Doc, cautious yet supportive, emphasized the difficulty of such a comeback. To even consider training him, he urged George to shed the excess pounds that had accumulated over the years. Undaunted, George embarked on a grueling daily exercise routine, demonstrating unwavering commitment. Slowly but surely, he managed to reach his ideal weight, proving that age was no barrier to his determination. With his weight under control, George returned to Doc, ready to rekindle his boxing career. He soon found himself in the ring, facing an opponent from abroad. Against the odds, George secured a surprising victory, prompting cheers, applause, and media attention. Television programs featured his remarkable comeback story, and his name began to resonate in the world of sports. The prestigious Golden Bell Championship was his next challenge. Although he faced defeat, the audience rallied behind him, appreciating his resolute spirit and undeniable courage. His unyielding determination was paying off not only in the ring, but also in his personal life. To cover his mounting debts, George decided to visit the bank. With the financial boost from endorsements and his recent matches, he managed to pay off those burdensome obligations, gaining a newfound sense of financial stability. Encouraged by his victories, George took on yet another fight, this time against a youthful and formidable champion. Despite the age gap, George's experience shone through. In a pivotal moment, he unleashed a devastating punch that knocked out his opponent. George's remarkable victory made him the boxing champion, earning the admiration of everyone, despite his advancing years.